I quit my soul-crushing job in a blaze of glory, stormed into the rain-soaked streets of Seattle, and slammed straight into the hottest, most infuriating man I'd ever met. 1 second, I was cursing my pack's endless pressure to mate with some safe, boring Silverfang lapdog. The next, I was chest to chest with a towering Eclipse enforcer who smelled like trouble and midnight runs. He smirked. I snapped. Sparks flew harder than the downpour. But crossing paths with the enemy pack isn't just reckless. It's the kind of mistake that could restart a war our kind barely survived 50 years ago. And the worst part? I couldn't stop wanting more. I was still vibrating with rage when I shoved open the door of the little indie coffee shop on Capitol Hill, rain dripping off my hood like I'd just lost a fight with a car wash. My boss's face when I told him exactly where he could file his performance review was the only highlight of my week until I realized I'd quit without a backup plan. Typical me. Silverfang pack elders would call it reckless. I called it finally breathing. The place was warm and crowded, smelling of fresh espresso and wet wool. I shook rain from my sleeves and made a beeline for the counter, muttering under my breath about needing the strongest thing they had that didn't come with corporate bullshit. That's when it happened. I turned too fast, phone in one hand, dripping coat flapping like a cape, and collided hard with a solid wall of man. My shoulder slammed into his chest. Hot coffee splashed across his dark shirt. My phone clattered to the floor. "Watch where you're going, shopping cart," a low, gravelly voice said above me. I looked up, way up, into storm gray eyes that pinned me in place. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair tousled from the rain, and a jaw that looked like it had been carved to annoy people. His soaked shirt clung to muscle that definitely didn't come from desk work. Eclipse Pack. I could tell from the way he carried himself, that quiet, controlled power. And damn if his scent didn't hit me like a freight train. Clean rain, pine, and something darker that made my wolf sit up and pay attention. Power imbalance? Oh, he thought so. He was already reaching for napkins like he was doing me a favor. That half smirk tugging at his mouth. Me, I shot back, ignoring the way my pulse kicked up. You're the one built like a damn brick wall taking up half the aisle. Ever heard of personal space? Or do Eclipse guys just assume the world moves around them? He chuckled. A deep rumble that shouldn't have been attractive, but absolutely was. Lady, you came barreling in here like you were escaping the cops. Least you could do is apologize before you ruin a perfectly good shirt. Apologize? I snatched the napkins from his hand, dabbing at the mess on his chest with maybe a little more force than necessary. You're the one standing there like a statue. And newsflash, it's just coffee. It'll wash out. Unlike your ego. His eyes narrowed, but the smirk grew. Feisty. Silverfang, right? Explains the attitude. You always this charming when you're soaking wet and pissed off. Heat crawled up my neck. Not from embarrassment. From the way his voice dropped on that last part, like he was cataloging every detail. My wolf stirred. Curious and annoyed in equal measure. Packs didn't mix. Not since the old treaty after the territory wars that nearly wiped us out. One wrong move and we'd be feeding the rumor mill that could crack 50 years of fragile peace wide open. I stepped back, grabbing my phone from the floor. Charming is overrated. Surviving pack politics is what matters. Now if you'll excuse me, I need caffeine before I commit actual violence. I turned toward the counter, but he didn't move out of my way. Instead, he leaned in slightly, voice low enough that only I could hear. Careful who you threaten, short stack. Some of us bite back. The nickname landed like a spark on dry tinder. I whirled, ready to unleash another retort, but the barista called my order and the moment stretched, charged and ridiculous. People were staring. My heart hammered harder than it should from a simple bump. He reached past me, paid for my drink before I could protest, and slid it across the counter with mock gallantry. On me. Consider it hazard pay for almost taking me out. I snatched the cup, fingers brushing his. Electricity shot up my arm. I don't need charity from an Eclipse enforcer, and don't think this makes us even. His laugh was quiet, dangerous. Wouldn't dream of it, but you owe me a new shirt. Or at least your name before you disappear back into the rain like a bad decision waiting to happen. I hesitated. Giving him my name felt like handing over ammunition. Mariah Kane, graphic designer by day, reluctant Silverfang rebel by night. Telling him would make this real, but walking away without a comeback felt like losing. Before I could decide, the door chimed behind me and a gust of cold rain swept in. I pushed past him, shoulder checking him lightly on purpose. Keep the shirt. It looks better ruined anyway. Outside, the downpour hit me full force again. I clutched the coffee, his scent still clinging to my coat, and started walking fast down the slick sidewalk. My wolf wouldn't shut up, pacing, intrigued, already replaying that smirk and those gray eyes. This was stupid, dangerous. The packs had rules for a reason. One collision, one conversation. And I could already feel the boundaries we weren't supposed to cross cracking under the weight of whatever the hell just happened. I glanced over my shoulder once. He was standing in the doorway watching me, rain streaking down the glass, that same infuriating half smirk on his face. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably my pack beta checking why I'd gone radio silent after quitting my job. But all I could think was how badly I wanted to turn around and give him another piece of my mind. Or maybe something worse, like his name. Chapter 2, The Shadow Tale. I made it 3 blocks before the paranoia really set in. Rain hammered the sidewalk like it had a personal grudge, and every splash under my boots sounded too loud. His scent, that stupid pine and midnight mix, still clung to my coat like an unwanted tattoo. I told myself it was just the coffee making my hands shake, not the way those storm gray eyes had tracked me out the door, not the low rumble of his laugh that kept replaying in my head like a bad song I secretly wanted to hear again. Get it together, Mariah, I muttered, dodging a puddle that tried to swallow my shoe hole. He's Eclipse, you're Silverfang. End of story. The treaty isn't some suggestion. It's the only thing stopping another bloodbath. My phone buzzed again. Pack beta, no doubt. Wondering why I'd gone dark after my dramatic exit from the design firm. I ignored it and kept walking, shoulders hunched against the cold. The streets were emptying fast as the storm worsened. Good. Fewer witnesses if my wolf decided to throw a tantrum and force a shift right here on Pine Street. That's when I felt it, the prickle at the back of my neck. Someone was watching, not the casual glance of a late-night pedestrian. This felt deliberate. Hunter's focus. My wolf surged forward, senses sharpening until the rain smelled sharper, the distant traffic louder. I didn't turn around. Instead, I cut left into a narrower alley between 2 brick buildings, the kind that smelled of old garbage and secrets. Footsteps echoed behind me, heavy, confident, not trying to hide. I spun, fists already clenched. If you're selling something I'm not buying, and if you're following me because of that coffee spill, you picked the wrong night. The guy who stepped into the weak glow of a flickering streetlight wasn't the coffee shop stranger. He was shorter, wiry, with a jagged scar across one cheek, and eyes that darted too fast. Rogue scent, no pack loyalty stamped on him. Perfect. Just what I needed after quitting my job and I fucking the enemy. Pretty little Silverfang out alone, he drawled, circling slowly. Heard you've been asking questions, stirring things up. Some people don't like that. My stomach dropped. Questions. I'd barely vented to my best friend about the latest arranged mate nonsense from the elders. Unless this wasn't about me at all. It was about the treaty, about boundaries we weren't supposed to test. I forced a laugh that came out sharper than intended. Buddy, I don't know what rock you crawled out from, but my night's already ruined. Walk away before I make it worse for both of us. He lunged without warning, faster than a human but sloppy for one of us. I dodged, slamming my coffee cup, still half full and scalding, straight into his face. He howled, clawing at his eyes. Good. That bought me seconds. I followed with a hard kick to his knee. the kind that would have dropped a normal guy. He staggered but didn't fall. Shifter strength. Great. We grappled in the narrow alley, rain turning the ground slick. He grabbed for my throat. I drove an elbow into his ribs and heard something crack. My wolf howled for release, but shifting here would draw every pack enforcer within miles. Bad idea. Very bad. Tell me who sent you, I snarled, pinning him against the wall with my forearm. He grinned through bloody teeth. Cross-pack curiosity gets wolves killed, especially when pretty girls start smelling like Eclipse enforcers. My blood ran cold. How the hell did he know about the coffee shop? Before I could demand answers, a dark shape exploded from the mouth of the alley like a freight train. The coffee shop guy, tall, broad, and moving with lethal grace, slammed into my attacker from the side. They crashed into a row of dumpsters with a metallic bang that echoed off the bricks. I stood there, chest heaving, watching in stunned silence as the enforcer took over. He was efficient, brutal in a controlled way. One punch dropped the rogue to his knees. A second sent him sprawling. No wasted moves. No showboating. Just raw power wrapped in that same infuriating confidence from the coffee shop. "Stay down," the enforcer growled, voice low and edged with warning. He planted a boot on the rogue's chest, pinning him effortlessly. The rogue spat blood. Eclipse dog defending a Silverfang bitch. The treaty's already cracking and you idiots don't even see it. The enforcer's jaw tightened. For a split second, I saw real anger flash across his face. Not at me, but at the words. Then he hauled the guy up by the collar and slammed him against the wall one last time. "Walk away, now, before I decide loose ends aren't worth the paperwork." The rogue scrambled free and bolted into the rain, limping badly. Smart choice. I would have chased him, but my legs felt like jelly, and my wolf was still snarling for more. Silence fell, broken only by the steady drum of rain. I wiped wet hair from my eyes and turned to face my unexpected backup. Up close again, he looked even more dangerous. Shirt still stained with coffee, knuckles split, rain plastering dark hair to his forehead. Those gray eyes locked on mine, assessing. "You followed me," I accused, trying to sound pissed instead of breathless. He shrugged, wiping blood from his lip with the back of his hand. "You left a trail a pup could follow, and you handle yourself like a drunk raccoon swinging at piñatas. Figured you might need actual help." "Drunk raccoon?" I stepped closer, ignoring the way my pulse jumped at his nearness. "I had him, mostly. And I don't need saving from some Eclipse enforcer playing hero in the rain." His smirk returned, slow and dangerous. "Didn't look like it from where I was standing. Name's Jimmy, by the way, since you never gave me yours back at the shop." "Mariah." I almost said it. Almost handed him that piece of me like an idiot. Instead, I crossed my arms, chin lifting. Names are for people who aren't violating 50-year-old treaties just by standing in the same alley. Whatever this is, ends here. Go back to your pack and pretend you never smelled a Silverfang tonight." Jimmy didn't move. If anything, he leaned in, voice dropping to that gravelly register that did unfair things to my insides. Funny thing about scents, short stack. They don't wash off easy. Especially not when they smell like defiance and bad decisions. The air between us crackled. Heavier than the rain, my wolf pushed hard, wanting closer, wanting to test exactly how far this power imbalance could tilt before it snapped. I could feel the heat rolling off him, could hear his heartbeat steady and strong under the storm. I opened my mouth to tell him exactly where he could shove his observations. Headlights swept the alley mouth. A car slowed, doors opened. More footsteps, multiple, moving with purpose. Jimmy's head snapped toward the sound, body tensing like a coiled spring. "We've got company, and they don't smell neutral." My stomach dropped. The rogue hadn't run far, or worse, he'd called friends. Jimmy grabbed my wrist, grip firm but not bruising. "Run or fight," I yanked free, heart hammering, already shifting my stance. "With you, neither sounds smart." But as shadows moved at the alley entrance, cutting off our exit. I realized the choice might not be mine anymore. Chapter 3: Coffee Snob versus Sarcasm Queen. The alley exploded into chaos before I could answer Jimmy's stupid question. 3 more figures spilled from the shadows, all rogue shifters, reeking of desperation and bad choices. Headlights cut through the rain like accusatory fingers. My wolf snarled inside my chest, demanding I shift and tear through them. Bad plan. Shifting in the open with witnesses nearby would bring both packs down on our heads faster than a bad Tinder date. Fight it is, I snapped, already moving. Jimmy didn't argue. He stepped in front of me like some overprotective wall, but I shoulder-checked him right back. Don't you dare play hero. I bite harder than you think. One rogue lunged at me with a rusty pipe. I ducked, swept his legs, and drove my knee into his gut as he went down. Pain flared across my knuckles when I followed with a punch, but the satisfaction of hearing him wheeze made it worth it. Beside me, Jimmy moved like liquid shadow. Efficient, brutal, no wasted motion. He dropped one attacker with a single precise strike to the throat and sent another flying into a dumpster with a metallic crash that echoed down the alley. Rain mixed with blood on the pavement. My heart hammered so loud I barely heard the sirens wailing in the distance. Cops. Perfect timing. Time to go, Jimmy growled, grabbing my arm again. This time I let him. Mostly because my side was throbbing from a lucky hit I'd taken. We bolted out the opposite end of the alley, boots splashing through puddles, dodging late-night pedestrians who probably thought we were just another pair of idiots running from trouble. We didn't stop until we hit a dimly lit food truck lot near the waterfront. Neutral ground, the kind of place where humans grabbed late-night tacos and shifters minded their own business if they knew what was good for them. Jimmy pulled me behind a brightly painted truck, smelling of grilled carne asada and cilantro. We pressed against the cold metal, chests heaving, rain still pouring down. His hand lingered on my waist a second longer than necessary before he dropped it. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough. Blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow, but he looked more annoyed than hurt. I wiped rain and possibly someone else's blood from my cheek. Define okay. I just got jumped by random rogues who somehow knew I bumped into an Eclipse enforcer tonight. And now I'm hiding behind a taco truck with said enforcer. My night is going great. He let out a short, surprised laugh. The kind that rumbled low in his chest and did unfair things to my concentration. Taco truck diplomacy. Very on-brand for you, short stack. You swing like you're trying to win a bar fight and lose at the same time. Excuse me? I poked his chest, right where the coffee stain had dried into a sad brown map. I had the first guy handled until you showed up playing knight in wet armor. And stop with the nickname. I have a name. It's not short stack. Jimmy's gray eyes sparkled with amusement despite the adrenaline still rolling off him. Then give it to me. Or should I just keep calling you the angry coffee assassin? I hesitated, then muttered, Mariah. Mariah Kane. Mariah, he repeated, like he was tasting it. The way his voice wrapped around the syllables sent a traitorous shiver down my spine. Fits. Sharp. A little bitey. Flattery won't get you anywhere when we're both probably being hunted right now. I glanced around the food truck lot. A few late customers huddled under umbrellas, oblivious. Good. Those rogues mentioned cross-pack stuff. Someone's watching, testing the treaty. Jimmy's expression sobered. Yeah, I caught that too. The old piece has held for 50 years because nobody's stupid enough to poke it. Until tonight, apparently. He leaned closer, voice dropping. You smell like trouble, Mariah Kane. The kind my wolf won't shut up about. Heat flooded my face. I stepped back, putting precious inches between us. Your wolf needs better hobbies, like fetching sticks or whatever Eclipse enforcers do in their spare time. This, us standing here, is a terrible idea. Packs don't mix. One wrong whisper and we're restarting the territory wars our grandparents barely survived. He didn't back off. Instead, he reached out and tucked a wet strand of hair behind my ear, the touch surprisingly gentle for someone who'd just dropped grown men like sacks of potatoes. Tell that to the part of me that followed your scent through half of Capitol Hill. You're not exactly running away screaming either. I swatted his hand, but there was no real force behind it. I don't scream. I insult. It's more efficient. My stomach chose that exact moment to growl loud enough to wake the dead. Traitor. Jimmy's smirk returned full force. Hungry after all that dancing? Sit. I'll grab us something before we both keel over and make this night even more pathetic. Before I could protest, he strode to the truck window and ordered 2 loaded tacos, extra hot sauce, and what sounded like the strongest black coffee they had. He came back with the food and handed me a foil-wrapped bundle like it was no big deal. We ate standing there in the rain, shoulders brushing occasionally, trading sharp little jabs between bites. He mocked my graphic design job, drawing pretty pictures while the real world tries to eat you. I fired back about his security firm, playing bodyguard for humans who can't even handle their own coffee orders. The banter flowed easy, too easy, laced with something warmer underneath that made my wolf settle instead of pace. But every laugh carried an edge. Every shared glance reminded me how dangerous this felt. The treaty wasn't a joke. Crossing it could drag both our packs into fresh hell. Territory disputes, broken alliances, blood on the streets again. I crumpled the foil wrapper and tossed it into a nearby bin. This was a mistake, a fun, adrenaline-fueled mistake, but still a mistake. We go our separate ways now. Pretend tonight never happened. Jimmy stepped closer, crowding my space without touching me. His scent wrapped around me again, stronger now that the rain had eased a little. You really think walking away is going to make my wolf forget how you smell when you're fighting? Or how you looked swinging that coffee cup like a weapon? My breath caught. The air between us thickened, charged with something far more dangerous than rogue shifters. Before I could snap out a comeback, my phone vibrated hard in my pocket. I pulled it out. Unknown number. The text glowed on the screen. Stay away from the Eclipse dog. Blood packs aren't jokes. Next time, we won't miss. I showed it to Jimmy. His jaw clenched so tight I heard teeth grind. Someone's been watching us closer than we thought, he said quietly. My pulse spiked. The food truck lot suddenly felt too exposed. Shadows moved at the edges of the lot. Or maybe it was just paranoia. Either way, the night wasn't done with us yet. And neither, apparently, was whatever stupid pull kept me from walking away from Jimmy Adams. Chapter 4. Midnight Rooftop Confessions. The threatening text burned in my mind as we slipped away from the food truck lot. Jimmy moved like he owned the shadows, guiding us through back streets until we reached an old parking garage downtown. We took the stairs up instead of the elevator, smarter when you're trying not to be followed. By the time we hit the top level and climbed the maintenance ladder to the open rooftop, my legs were screaming and my nerves were raw. Seattle spread out below us in a glittering, rain-slicked maze of lights. The Space Needle glowed in the distance, like a beacon we had no business heading toward. Wind whipped across the exposed concrete, carrying the faint scent of the bay. At least up here, no one would stumble on us easily. Jimmy leaned against a rusted ventilation unit, scanning the access points with those enforcer eyes. Safe enough for 10 minutes, maybe 15 if we're lucky. I paced near the edge, arms wrapped around myself against the chill. The fight, the tacos, the text. It all churned in my gut. Lucky? We just got jumped by rogues who knew too much. And now anonymous cowards are texting threats. This isn't luck. This is the treaty starting to crack because 2 idiots couldn't keep their sense to themselves. He watched me, quiet for once, no smirk. Just that steady gray gaze that saw too damn much. You're not an idiot, Mariah. Neither am I. But pretending we didn't feel whatever the hell sparked in that coffee shop won't make it go away. I stopped pacing and faced him. Rain had eased to a drizzle, but my clothes were still soaked through. Sparked? Is that what we're calling nearly getting our asses handed to us? My pack elders have been shoving suitable Silverfang males at me for months. Safe, boring, good for alliances. One wrong step with you, and I'm not just disappointing them. I'm risking fresh blood on the streets. Jimmy pushed off the vent and closed the distance slowly, giving me time to back away. I didn't. Stupid wolf. You think I don't know the weight? I'm the one my alpha sends when things get messy. I've seen what happens when packs forget the old rules. Lost friends because someone decided territory lines mattered more than lives. His voice roughened. But standing here with you doesn't feel like a political mistake. It feels like the first real thing I've wanted in years that isn't handed down by pack orders. The honesty hit harder than any rogue's punch. I swallowed, throat tight. Don't say that. Don't make this harder. My laugh came out shaky and bitter. God listened to us. We met because I spilled coffee on you, and now we're on a rooftop confessing deep feelings like some bad rom-com. Next you'll tell me your wolf wants to play fetch with my socks. That earned a low chuckle from him, breaking some of the tension. My wolf has better taste than socks, but he does like how you bite back. Most females either roll over or challenge for dominance. You just insult me and make me laugh while doing it. I rolled my eyes, but a reluctant smile tugged at my lips. Flirting by calling me insulting? Bold strategy. How's that working out for you so far? Better than expected. He reached out, hesitating before brushing a thumb across my cheek where a bruise was probably forming. The touch was gentle, almost careful. You're not what I expected from a Silverfang. They're all control and tradition. You're fire. Heat pooled low in my belly. I caught his wrist but didn't pull away. And you're not the mindless enforcer I pictured. You're annoyingly decent and annoyingly hot, which makes this whole thing a nightmare. The space between us shrank. Our breaths mingled in the cool night air. I could feel the steady thrum of his heartbeat, smell the rain and pine on his skin. My wolf pushed forward, urging me closer, whispering that one taste wouldn't break the world. Jimmy's voice dropped to a gravelly whisper. Tell me to walk away right now, and I will. But I think we both know that's not what you want. I rose on my toes, drawn like a magnet. Our lips brushed, soft at first, testing. Then the kiss deepened. Hungry and edged with the same frustration we'd been trading all night. His hand settled on my waist, pulling me in as I gripped his damp shirt. It wasn't gentle. It was years of pack pressure and denied wants crashing together in one reckless moment. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, I rested my forehead against his chest. This can't happen again. Not like this. Not when one wrong move could drag everyone down with us. He tilted my chin up, eyes dark with want and something deeper. Maybe, but I'm not great at following rules that feel this wrong to obey. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. Another unknown number. I pulled it out with shaking fingers. The new message was shorter, colder. We see you on the rooftop. End it tonight or the packs will end you both. My blood turned to ice. Jimmy read it over my shoulder, body going rigid beside me. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell below. Multiple sets, coming up fast. We weren't alone anymore. Chapter 5. Full Moon Urge. Footsteps thundered up the stairwell. Jimmy cursed under his breath and grabbed my hand. Move! Now! We sprinted across the rooftop, hearts slamming in sync. I vaulted over a low vent pipe, nearly slipping on the wet concrete. Behind us, shouts echoed. Rough voices calling out pack names like curses. Silverfang, Eclipse. The words landed like punches. We hit the fire escape on the far side and descended in a clatter of metal rungs, rain-slicked and treacherous. My wolf clawed at my insides, desperate for the shift, but I shoved it down. Not here. Not with witnesses and sirens still wailing somewhere below. We hit the ground running and didn't stop until we'd lost them in the maze of downtown alleys. By the time we collapsed against the side of a closed warehouse, the moon hung fat and heavy overhead, full, pulling at every shifter nerve like a biological alarm clock that refused to be snoozed. Jimmy's chest heaved. A fresh bruise darkened his jaw. They're getting bolder. That text wasn't a bluff. I leaned my head back against the cold brick, trying to catch my breath. No kidding, my wolf's losing its mind. The full moon's hitting hard tonight. The pull was stronger than usual, a deep, instinctive itch that made my skin feel too tight. Shifting wasn't optional on nights like this. It was biology screaming for release. He looked at me, gray eyes reflecting the moonlight. There's a patch of woods near the old arboretum edge. Hidden enough, neutral. We shift there, or we risk losing control in the middle of the city. I should have said no. Should have told him to go find his own damn forest and leave me to handle my wolf alone. Instead, I nodded. Lead the way. But if this goes south, I'm blaming your terrible escape routes. We moved fast, sticking to shadows until the city lights thinned and trees rose around us. A secluded stretch of urban woodland tucked behind maintenance roads, dense enough to feel wild but close enough to hear distant traffic. The full moon bathed everything in silver, turning leaves into glowing edges and casting long, eerie shadows. The urge hit like a wave the moment we stepped under the canopy. My bones ached, muscles twitching with the need to change. Jimmy stripped off his damp shirt without ceremony, revealing scars and muscle that made my mouth go dry despite everything. "Eyes up here, short stack," he said, voice rough with the same strain I felt. But there was humor in it, that familiar smirk fighting through the instinct. "Shut up and shift before I bite you first," I shot back, peeling off my own wet layers and hiding them under a thick bush. Nakedness wasn't new for shifters, but doing it with him felt different, charged, vulnerable, and annoyingly electric. The change ripped through me, bones reshaped, first sprouted in a rush of silver gray. I landed on 4 paws, sleek and fast, shaking out my coat. Jimmy's shift was powerful. Midnight black fur, massive frame, scars visible even in wolf form. His wolf was built for battle, all coiled strength and quiet dominance. For a moment we just stared at each other, wolves sizing up wolves. Then the moon's pull took over. We ran. The forest blurred around us. I darted ahead, agile and quick, leaping over fallen logs and weaving through underbrush. Jimmy gave chase, his heavier paws thundering behind. He caught me in a playful tackle that sent us rolling across damp moss, nipping at each other's flanks without real harm. Laughter translated into joyful yips and mock growls. My wolf felt alive in a way it never did trapped in the city under pack rules. We hunted briefly, nothing serious, just the thrill of the chase after a rabbit that got away. Then we slowed, circling each other under a break in the trees, where moonlight poured down like liquid silver. Instinct drew us closer. He nudged my shoulder with his massive head. I leaned into it, the contact sending warmth through fur and bone. When the moon's peak passed and the compulsion eased, we shifted back. Naked, breathless, skin flushed from the run, I scrambled for cover behind a thick bush, heart still racing from more than the shift. "Stop staring, you perv," I called out, voice shaky. This is why clothes were invented, or at least why wolves should carry backpacks. Jimmy's low chuckle came from nearby. Hard not to when you run like that. Graceful, deadly. And yeah, my wolf's already complaining about the lack of socks to fetch. I peeked out. He stood half hidden by another tree, moonlight highlighting the lines of his body. The humor faded as our eyes locked. The run had burned off some tension, but left something hotter in its place. Raw need mixed with the vulnerability of choosing this together. I stepped out first, no longer hiding. He met me halfway. This time, when we came together, there was no rooftop hesitation. Hands explored with purpose, mouths hungry from hours of banter and near misses. We sank to the blanket of moss and fallen leaves, passion igniting fast and fierce. It wasn't gentle romance. It was mutual fire, consent in every touch, every whispered yes between gasps. My nails dug into his shoulders as pleasure built, his growl vibrating against my skin. Afterward, we lay tangled under a stolen emergency blanket from his car. He doubled back for it earlier, annoyingly prepared. I traced a scar on his chest, breathing still uneven. If anyone finds out about this, we're both dead. Literally. Packs don't forgive treaty breakers. Jimmy pulled me closer, lips brushing my temple. Worth it. Even if your post-shift snoring sounds like a dying chainsaw. I laughed despite myself, swatting his arm. I do not snore. And this still doesn't mean anything beyond tonight. We go back to pretending tomorrow. But as we dressed in the quieting woods, my wolf settled content and possessive in a way that terrified me. The moon had forced the shift, but the choice to be here with him had been mine. My phone, left on silent in my coat pocket, lit up with a new message as we started heading back toward the city edge. The text was simple, chilling. Full moon runs, leave tracks. We know where you shifted. Choose the treaty or choose each other. You won't get both. Jimmy read it over my shoulder, body tensing. Distant howls rose on the wind, not playful, warning. The radicals weren't done. And neither was the pull between us. Chapter 6. Morning after regrets and cravings. Sunlight filtered through my apartment blinds like an unwelcome accusation the next morning. I woke tangled in sheets that still carried faint traces of Pine and Jimmy. My body ached in the best and worst ways. Reminders of the forest, the shift, the way we'd come together like the moon had rewritten every rule. I groaned and sat up, grabbing my phone. 3 missed calls from my pack beta. 1 text from an unknown number repeating the threat. And nothing from Jimmy. Good, smart. We'd agreed last night, or rather, I'd insisted, that we'd go back to normal. Pretend the full moon never happened. My wolf disagreed. It paced restlessly, craving his scent again like an addict. Shut up, I muttered, dragging myself to the shower. Hot water helped wash away the dirt, but not the memory of his hands or that low laugh when he'd called my snoring a chainsaw. I dressed in my usual hoodie and jeans, covering the faint marks on my skin, and headed to my tiny kitchen for coffee. Strong, black, nothing fancy. My phone buzzed on the counter, unknown number again. I almost ignored it, but curiosity, or stupidity, won. The message read, "Coffee shop, neutral, 1 hour, we need to talk." K. My stomach flipped. Talk. Right. Because that had gone so well last time, I should have deleted it, blocked the number. Instead, I found myself grabbing my keys and heading out, telling myself it was only to tell him in person that last night was a one-time biological mistake. The same indie coffee shop looked different in daylight, less dramatic, more ordinary. Jimmy was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him, one black, one with the ridiculous extra foam and caramel I secretly liked. He looked tired but still unfairly composed. Fresh bruise on his jaw faded to yellow. I slid into the seat across from him. Stalking my coffee order now? Creepy, even for an enforcer. He slid the cup toward me with a faint smirk. Figured after last night you'd need something sweet to balance all that sarcasm. How's the chainsaw throat this morning? Heat rushed to my face. I took a sip to hide it. Fine, and we're not talking about last night. It was the moon, biology, end of discussion. Jimmy leaned forward, voice low. Biology doesn't explain why I can't stop thinking about how you tackled that rogue or how you looked running under the moon. My wolf's been unbearable since we parted ways. I glanced around. The shop was half full of humans tapping on laptops. Safe enough for quiet talk, but every word felt risky. Your wolf needs therapy. Mine too. The texts are getting worse. Someone knows. If our packs catch wind of this, it won't be exile. It'll be war. The treaty exists because the last territory fight killed too many on both sides. He nodded, serious now. I checked with a contact. Radicals on both sides are stirring. They want the old power struggles back. Territory control, money from underground deals. A cross-pack fling is the perfect spark. Fling? I raised an eyebrow, trying for humor. Is that what we're calling rolling around in the woods like horny teenagers? His laugh was quiet but real. Better than fated mates nonsense. We're choosing this, Mariah. Not some instinct bullshit. That's what scares them. We talked longer than planned. trading stories about pack pressure. I admitted how the elders kept pushing safe matches that felt like cages. He confessed the weight of being the one everyone called when things got bloody, never allowed a weakness. The banter returned, lighter moments cutting through the tension. Him mocking my drunk raccoon fighting style again. Me threatening to design a logo for his security firm that said, "Eclipse, we guard your ego." But underneath, the craving built. Stolen glances. Accidental brushes of fingers when passing napkins. My wolf wanted closer. His eyes darkened when I licked foam from my lip. "We can't keep meeting like this," I said, finally standing. "It's too dangerous." Jimmy stood too, crowding my space just enough. "Then stop replying to my texts. Stop showing up." He leaned in, voice a gravelly whisper. "But you won't, because this feels real, and real is worth the risk." I wanted to argue. Instead, I slipped out the door before I did something stupid like kiss him in public. Back home, another anonymous note had been slipped under my apartment door. Not a text this time, handwritten on plain paper. "We warned you. Continue, and the next full moon will run red." My hands shook as I read it. The radicals were closing in. Meeting Jimmy again would be playing with fire. Yet when my phone buzzed with a new message from him, a simple, "Tonight, neutral park," I stared at it for a long minute before typing back one word. "Yes." The door to my apartment creaked open behind me. I spun, heart leaping into my throat. A shadowy figure stood in the doorway, scent unfamiliar and hostile. "Silverfang whore," the intruder growled. "Time to learn what happens when you break the rules." Chapter 7. Stakeout and Sarcasm. The intruder lunged before I could scream. I dodged sideways, grabbing the nearest weapon, a heavy ceramic lamp from my side table, and swung it like a baseball bat. It shattered against his shoulder with a satisfying crack. He roared and grabbed for me, claws partially extended in a half shift. I kicked hard at his knee, the same move that had worked in the alley, but this guy was bigger and meaner. Pain exploded in my ribs as he slammed me against the wall. My wolf surged forward, vision sharpening, but shifting inside my apartment would destroy the place and bring every neighbor calling the cops. A dark blur crashed through the still open door. Jimmy. He must have been close, maybe already heading over after my one-word reply. He tackled the attacker from behind, driving him to the floor in a heap of snarling muscle. "Get off her!" Jimmy growled, landing heavy punches that made the intruder wheeze. I didn't waste time watching. I scrambled for my phone and dialed emergency. Not human cops, but a neutral shifter contact I kept for exactly these kinds of messes. By the time I hung up, Jimmy had the guy pinned, forearm across his throat. "Who sent you?" Jimmy demanded, voice lethal. The intruder spat blood and laughed raggedly. "Radicals send their regards. Cross-pack trash like you two are the spark. The treaty burns, and you burn with it." Jimmy's eyes flashed with barely contained rage. Before he could press harder, the intruder headbutted him and broke free, bolting for the door. Jimmy started after him but stopped when I grabbed his arm. "Let him go," I said, breathing hard. "My contact is already sending cleanup. We can't risk more noise here." We stood in the wrecked apartment, lamp shards everywhere, a cracked picture frame on the floor. Jimmy turned to me, scanning for injuries, his hands gentle as they checked my ribs. "You all right?" Bruised ego and bruised ribs, same difference. I tried for humor, but it came out shaky. "You have terrible timing. Or perfect. Jury's still out." He didn't smile. "This is escalating fast. They're not just threatening anymore." We cleaned up what we could in silence, then slipped out before anyone official arrived. Jimmy drove us to a quiet overlook park on the edge of the city. Neutral territory again, with good sightlines and few people after dark. We settled on a bench under a cluster of trees for what felt like the world's most dangerous stakeout. Hours passed in tense waiting. We watched for movement, trading low whispers and worse coffee from a thermos Jimmy had brought. The humor helped keep the fear at bay. "If we die tonight," I whispered during a long stretch of silence, I'm haunting you as a very annoying ghost. I'll rearrange your socks and hide your coffee mugs." Jimmy's quiet laugh rumbled beside me. "Good. At least the sex will finally be quiet without your chainsaw impression." I elbowed him, fighting a grin. "I do not snore. You, on the other hand, sound like a truck with a bad muffler when you're recovering from a shift." We bantered to stay sharp, but the night grew heavier. My ribs ached. Every shadow made my wolf twitch. Around 2 a.m., a figure appeared at the far end of the path. Another rogue, moving carefully, checking his phone like he was waiting for instructions. "There," Jimmy murmured. "That's one of the ones from the rooftop." We moved in tandem, silent as we could. I circled left while Jimmy took the right. When the rogue spotted us, he bolted. The chase was short and ugly. We cornered him near an old fountain, and this time we got answers. Grudging ones. "Radicals in both packs," the guy gasped as Jimmy held him firm. "They want the old wars back. Territory, money, power. You two are the perfect excuse to rip the treaty apart." He clammed up after that, and we let him run rather than risk killing him and starting the very war we feared. Back at the bench, adrenaline still buzzing, Jimmy pulled me close. The kiss was fierce, born of fear and relief. Hands wandered under clothes, breaths coming fast. We didn't go further, not here in the open, but the heat between us crackled like live wire. "Tell me this is still just biology," I whispered against his mouth, nails digging into his shoulders. "It stopped being just biology the moment you called me a brick wall in that coffee shop," he replied, voice rough. We stayed until the sky began to lighten, then slipped away separately to avoid being seen together. I made it home just as my pack beta texted demanding a meeting. "Elders are asking questions." My stomach twisted. The noose was tightening. Later that afternoon, another anonymous text arrived while I was trying to work on a graphic project. "Stakeouts leave trails too. We see everything. Break it off or we break you." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The radicals were always one step ahead. That evening, Jimmy sent a single message. "Summit tomorrow. Both packs in the same room. Be careful." The thought of seeing him there, surrounded by wolves who would kill us for what we'd done, sent ice down my spine. And worse, I realized I was already counting the hours until I could see those storm-gray eyes again, even if it meant playing enemies in public. Chapter 8. Jealousy and Pack Pressure. The Summit Hall was neutral ground, an old converted warehouse downtown, dressed up with long tables and too much tension in the air. Both packs filled the room, Silverfangs on one side in their controlled polished style, Eclipses on the other radiating raw power. I sat with my pack, trying to look bored instead of terrified. Jimmy was across the room with the Eclipse contingent. Our eyes met once, brief, electric, before we both looked away. One wrong glance could give us away. The elders droned on about maintaining the peace and honoring the 50-year treaty. Every word felt like a knife aimed at my chest. My beta leaned over during a break. "Elders have a match in mind for you, Mariah. Solid Silverfang male, good blood, stable." I forced a tight smile. How romantic. Tell them I'm thrilled. Across the room, Jimmy's father, the Eclipse Alpha, was speaking quietly to him. I caught fragments. Odd behavior lately. Focus on duty, not distractions. Jealousy flared hot and ugly when a sleek Eclipse female leaned in too close to Jimmy, laughing at something he said. My wolf growled low in my throat. I wanted to march over and remind her exactly whose scent was still faintly on his skin from the forest. Instead, I dug my nails into my palm and looked away. During the lunch break, I slipped out to a side corridor for air. Jimmy appeared moments later, pulling me into a shadowed alcove. The kiss was desperate, quick, and far too risky. "Stop," I whispered, pushing at his chest even as I kissed him back. "Someone will see." "I know." His voice was strained. Watching them push that safe little match on you is driving my wolf insane. You're not theirs to assign. And that female hanging all over you, I shot back, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Is she part of your duty? Jimmy's smirk flickered. Jealous, short stack. Annoyed. There's a difference. I straightened his collar, fingers lingering. This summit is a minefield. One slip, and we're done. We separated just before a group of elders passed. The rest of the afternoon dragged. Proposals for stronger enforcement of the treaty. Warnings about outside agitators. Clearly aimed at the radicals, but it felt personal. My elders kept glancing my way, suspicion in their eyes. By the time the summit ended, my nerves were shredded. I headed for the exit with my pack when Jimmy's voice carried across the room. Calm, controlled, but loud enough for me to hear. Father, I'm handling my responsibilities. No distractions. The words stung more than they should. I knew it was for show, but my wolf didn't care. It felt like rejection. That night, alone in my repair department, I poured a glass of wine and tried to work on designs. My phone lit up with a message from Jimmy. Had to say it. Didn't mean it. Meet me at the old pier tonight. Need to see you. I stared at the screen for a long time. Every logical part of me screamed no. The radicals were watching. Packs were closing in. This was getting too dangerous, yet I found myself grabbing my coat. The pier was deserted, waves lapping against old wooden posts under a cloudy sky. Jimmy waited at the end, hands in his pockets, looking every bit the enforcer, even in civilian clothes. I walked up, arms crossed. You sounded very convincing today about no distractions. He turned, pulling me into his arms without a word. The kiss was slower this time, deeper, full of the frustration we couldn't show in public. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I hate pretending you're nothing to me, he admitted. My wolf wants to claim you in front of both packs, and damn the consequences. Don't, I whispered. Claiming solves nothing. We need to be smart. A distant engine growled. Headlights swept the pier entrance. 2 vehicles stopped, doors opening. Figures stepped out, mixed scents, some Silverfang, some Eclipse. Not rogues this time. Official pack muscle. Jimmy tensed beside me. They followed one of us. My heart slammed against my ribs. We were trapped at the end of the pier with nowhere to run and the full weight of both packs' suspicion bearing down. One of the approaching wolves called out, voice carrying over the water. Jimmy Adams, Mariah Kane, the alphas want answers. Now. The game was up. Or at least it was about to get a hell of a lot more dangerous. Chapter 9. Crossing the Line. The pack enforcers closed in along the pier, their footsteps heavy on the weathered wood. Moonlight glinted off the water like a warning. My wolf surged forward, ready to fight or flee, but there was nowhere to go except into the cold bay. Jimmy stepped slightly in front of me, shoulders squared, every inch the Eclipse enforcer. This isn't what it looks like, he said, voice steady but edged with steel. One of the Silverfang enforcers, a beta I recognized from pack meetings, let out a harsh laugh. Save it. We've had reports. Strange sense. Late night meetings. You two reek of each other. The Eclipse side didn't look any friendlier. Jimmy's own packmate glared at him like he'd committed treason. Alpha's waiting for an explanation, Adams. Cross-pack contact is forbidden for a reason. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was it. The moment the treaty came crashing down because of one spilled coffee and a full moon run. I lifted my chin, refusing to look weak. We were talking, that's all. The radicals are the real threat, not 2 people having a conversation on a pier. The Silverfang beta sneered. Talking, right, while breaking every rule that's kept blood off the streets for 50 years. Tension crackled thicker than the salt air, fists clenched. Growls rumbled low. One wrong word and this pier would turn into a battlefield. Jimmy's hand brushed mine behind his back, a secret grounding touch. Stand down, he told his packmate. This isn't the time or place. For a heartbeat, it looked like they might actually listen. Then headlights from another vehicle swept the pier. More wolves poured out, these ones clearly radicals, mixed from both packs. Faces twisted with triumph. "See," one of them shouted. "Proof. They're already plotting. The treaty is dead the moment we let filth like this continue." Chaos erupted. Shifters lunged. I dodged a Silverfang enforcer who grabbed for me, using the pier railing to swing around and plant a kick in his gut. Jimmy took down 2 at once with brutal efficiency, but more kept coming. Fists flew. Someone shifted halfway, claws raking the air. I tasted blood when a punch caught my lip. "Run," Jimmy shouted over the noise, grabbing my wrist. We sprinted down the pier, leaping over fallen bodies and dodging swings. Behind us, the fight spilled into full brawl. Pack against pack, old grudges igniting like dry tinder. We hit the end of the wooden structure and didn't stop, jumping straight into the cold water of the bay. The shock of it stole my breath. We swam hard under the pier, using the shadows and pilings for cover until the sounds of fighting faded. When we finally dragged ourselves onto a rocky shore, a quarter-mile down, we were soaked, bruised, and breathing like we'd run a marathon. Jimmy rolled onto his back on the pebbles, chest heaving. "Well, that went exactly as planned." I laughed, a sharp, slightly hysterical sound, and shoved wet hair out of my eyes. "Your definition of plan needs serious work. We almost started the war we're trying to avoid." He turned his head to look at me, water dripping from his dark hair. Even battered and half drowned, he looked unfairly good. "At least we're still breathing. For now." We found shelter in an abandoned boathouse nearby. Old, creaky, smelling of salt and forgotten fishing gear. Jimmy broke a lock with casual strength, and we slipped inside. There were a couple of dusty blankets and an old lantern. Better than nothing. We stripped out of our wet clothes without ceremony, hanging them to dry on rusty hooks. Naked again, but this time the mood felt heavier. The adrenaline from the fight still buzzed under my skin, mixing with the fear of how close we'd come to exposure. Jimmy spread one blanket on the floor and pulled me down with him under the other. "Come here." This time when we came together, it wasn't just passion, it was deeper, slower, like we were both trying to memorize every touch in case tomorrow ripped us apart. His hands mapped my bruises with surprising gentleness. I traced the new marks on his shoulders, pressing kisses along his collarbone. The heat built gradually, intense and consuming, until we were lost in each other, gasps and quiet growls. Bodies moving in perfect sync. No jokes this time. Just raw need and the terrifying realization that this felt like home. Afterward, tangled together under the thin blanket, I rested my head on his chest, listening to his heart beat slow. "We can't keep doing this in the city," I whispered. "Too many eyes, too many chances to get caught." Jimmy's fingers stroked slowly down my spine. "I know a place. Neutral territory, about 2 hours outside Seattle. Old cabin on private land my security firm uses for training sometimes. No pack sense, no cameras. We could go for the weekend, get our heads straight, figure out what the hell we're doing." I lifted my head to look at him. "A weekend getaway? With the radicals breathing down our necks and both packs suspicious? That sounds like the plot of a very short horror movie." His smirk returned. "Tired but genuine. Or the only chance we'll get to be normal for a couple days. No sneaking, no threats. Just us." The idea was reckless, dangerous, exactly the kind of thing that could get us both killed. I should have said no. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "When do we leave?" We slipped out of the boathouse before dawn, driving separately to avoid suspicion. I packed light, clothes, my laptop for work I probably wouldn't touch, and a burner phone. Jimmy picked me up at a neutral gas station on the edge of town. The drive out of Seattle was quiet at first, the city shrinking in the rearview mirror. Tension eased the farther we got from packed territories. We stopped for terrible gas station coffee and even worse snacks, trading sarcastic comments about each other's choices. "You seriously eat beef jerky that looks like shoe leather?" I asked, wrinkling my nose. "Better than whatever sugary abomination you're drinking," he shot back, stealing a sip anyway. By the time we reached the cabin, a sturdy wooden place nestled in dense evergreen forest, the sun was setting. It felt like stepping into another world. No city noise, no watchful eyes. Just trees, birds, and the two of us. We carried our bags inside. Jimmy set the keys on the counter and turned to me, gray eyes soft in the fading light. No packs, no treaty, no radicals for the next 48 hours, he said quietly. Just you and me, Mariah, if you still want this. I crossed the room and kissed him, slow, deliberate, full of everything I couldn't say out loud. I want this. We didn't make it past the living room couch before clothes started coming off again. The weekend stretched ahead like stolen time, passionate and free in a way nothing had been since that first coffee shop collision. But as night fell and we lay tangled together in the big cabin bed, my phone, the burner one, buzzed on the nightstand with an unknown number. I picked it up with a sinking feeling. The message was short and ice cold. We know where you ran to. Enjoy your little getaway while it lasts. The woods have eyes. Jimmy read it over my shoulder, body going rigid against mine. The radicals had followed us. Our safe haven wasn't safe at all. Chapter 10. The Pact Revealed. The burner phone felt like a live grenade in my hand. The message glowed on the screen, cold and mocking. We know where you ran to. Enjoy your little getaway while it lasts. The woods have eyes. Jimmy's body went rigid against mine. The warmth we'd been sharing instantly replaced by coiled tension. He sat up, muscles flexing as he scanned the dark windows of the cabin like he could see through the walls. They followed us, he said, voice low and dangerous. How the hell did they follow us this far out? I tossed the phone onto the nightstand like it had burned me. Doesn't matter how, they did. So much for 48 hours of normal. My heart was racing again, the peaceful bubble we'd built popping faster than it had formed. The radicals weren't playing anymore. They wanted blood, and we were the perfect excuse to start spilling it. Jimmy swung his legs off the bed and pulled on jeans, movements sharp and efficient. We're not sitting here waiting for them to knock. Get dressed. We check the perimeter. We moved through the cabin like ghosts, killing lights and slipping out the back door into the cool night air. The forest pressed close, evergreens whispering in the breeze. Every snap of a twig made my wolf snap to attention. We circled the property in silence, Jimmy taking the wider loops while I checked closer to the building. No fresh scents, no obvious tracks, but the feeling of being watched crawled over my skin like spiders. Back inside, we barricaded the doors with whatever heavy furniture we could move and sat at the kitchen table with the lights still off. Moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows. The romance of the getaway had curdled into something sharper, more desperate. I rubbed my arms, suddenly cold despite the heater. This is exactly what I was afraid of. 1 weekend away, and we've painted a target on both our backs. The treaty exists because the last territory war killed dozens on each side. Families torn apart. Territory lines redrawn in blood. And here we are, giving the radicals the spark they need. Jimmy reached across the table and took my hand, his grip firm and grounding. I know the history. My grandfather fought in those battles. He lost a brother because Silverfang and Eclipse couldn't stop fighting over hunting grounds and power. The pact was signed to stop the bleeding. No interpack bonds. No mixing bloodlines. Keep the peace at all costs. He paused, thumb stroking over my knuckles. But the pact was written by scared old wolves who thought fear would hold everything together. It never addressed what happens when two people choose each other anyway. His words hung between us. I stared at our joined hands, the contrast of his scarred knuckles against my skin. Choose each other, I repeated softly. That sounds nice in theory. In practice, it gets us hunted in the woods like rabbits. A bitter laugh escaped me. My pack elders keep pushing safe matches because they think it strengthens the blood, keeps us pure and controlled. I've spent years dodging arranged dinners and polite suggestions about settling down with some loyal Silverfang guy who wouldn't challenge me. And now, one collision in a coffee shop, and I'm risking everything for a guy who calls me short stack and snores like a dying truck. Jimmy's smirk flickered in the dim light. I do not snore like a truck, and you love the nickname. Admit it. Love is a strong word, I shot back, but the corner of my mouth twitched despite everything. The humor felt like armor, thin but necessary. What about you, Mr. Top Enforcer? Always the strong one, always cleaning up messes. Don't tell me the great Jimmy Adams never wanted something just for himself instead of for the pack. He was quiet for a long moment. The cabin creaked around us, wind rattling the windows. I've spent my whole adult life being what they needed, the one they call when things get bloody, the one who never shows weakness. Meeting you, it's the first time my wolf has wanted something that wasn't handed down as duty. His voice dropped. You make me want to be more than just the enforcer. You make me laugh in the middle of fights. You bite back. That's rare. The vulnerability in his tone cracked something open inside me. I stood and moved around the table, sliding into his lap. He wrapped his arms around me automatically, pulling me close. We didn't rush into passion this time. Instead, I rested my forehead against his, breathing him in, pine, rain, and that unmistakable wolf scent that had hooked me from the start. I dug through some old family journals before we left, I confessed quietly. My grandmother wrote about the signing of the pact. She called it a necessary evil after the wars. But she also wrote that it was built on fear, not truth. Some elders twisted the details for personal gain. More territory, more control. The official story says mutual protection. The truth might be greed dressed up as peace. Jimmy's arms tightened around me. That matches what I've heard whispered on my side. The pact was never meant to last forever. It was a bandage on a wound that never fully healed. And now the radicals are ripping the bandage off to start fresh bleeding. We talked deep into the night, voices low, bodies pressed close for comfort as much as warmth. The conversation wove between fear and hope, between the weight of decades-old rules and the simple, terrifying truth that we were falling for each other anyway. Jimmy challenged me when I tried to pull back into sarcasm. I pushed him when he retreated into enforcer mode. The romance wasn't soft or easy. It was fierce, honest, and built on equal ground. As the sky began to lighten toward dawn, Jimmy kissed me slow and deep, hands sliding under my shirt with quiet intent. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Not as Silverfang and Eclipse, as us. I nodded against his mouth, losing myself in the kiss, in the solid strength of him. For a few stolen minutes, the threats outside faded. Then glass shattered in the front window. We bolted upright as dark shapes moved outside the cabin. Multiple figures. The scent of hostile wolves flooded the room. Radicals, close and aggressive. Jimmy shoved me behind him, already shifting partially, claws extending. "They're here!" A voice called from the trees, mocking and loud. "Come out, lovebirds. The pact is watching. Time to choose. Your little romance or your pack's survival." My stomach dropped. They hadn't just followed us. They had brought reinforcements. And this time, there was nowhere left to run. Chapter 11. Sabotage begins. Glass shattered across the cabin floor like jagged warnings. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the block and backed toward the hallway, heart slamming against my ribs. Jimmy was already moving, body half shifted with claws extended and shoulders bunched like a storm about to break. "Stay behind me," he growled. "Like hell," I snapped, gripping the knife tighter. "We're in this together, remember?" The front door burst open with a crack of splintering wood. 3 radicals stormed in, 2 Eclipse, 1 Silverfang by their sense, faces twisted with righteous fury. The lead Eclipse male pointed straight at us. "You violated the pact. Cross-pack filth. The old wars are coming back, and you two lit the match." Jimmy didn't waste words. He launched forward, colliding with the leader in a crash of muscle and snarls. I took the Silverfang female who lunged at me. ducking her wild swing and driving my shoulder into her gut. We slammed into the couch, knocking it over with a heavy thud. She clawed at my arms, drawing blood, but I headbutted her hard enough to make her eyes roll. Still fighting like a drunk raccoon, Jimmy called out mid-fight, even as he tossed one attacker into the wall. Better than fighting like a brick wall with anger issues, I shouted back, jamming my elbow into my opponent's throat. The cabin descended into chaos. Furniture splintered, glass crunched under boots. One of the radicals shifted fully, a massive gray wolf that filled the living room and sent the coffee table flying. Jimmy met him head-on, shifting in a blur of midnight fur and power. Their wolves clashed in a whirlwind of teeth and claws, knocking over lamps and sending bookshelves crashing. I stayed human, using speed and the knife to my advantage against the remaining female. She was strong but sloppy, driven by ideology rather than training. I feinted left, then kicked her knee out and pinned her with my weight. "Who's pulling your strings?" I demanded, pressing the blade to her neck. "This isn't just about us. You're being used," she spat in my face. "The pact is a lie. Greedy elders on both sides wrote it to hoard power. We're taking back what's ours: territory, respect, blood money from the underground roots. Your little romance is the excuse we needed." Before I could press for more, Jimmy's wolf let out a victorious snarl. The big gray wolf limped away, tail tucked. The female under me took advantage of my distraction and shoved me off, scrambling for the broken door. The third radical was already fleeing into the trees. We didn't chase, not outnumbered and in unfamiliar woods. Jimmy shifted back, breathing hard, blood streaking his side from a deep gash. I rushed to him, pressing a torn piece of curtain against the wound. "You're hurt." "Already healing," he grunted, but he let me fuss. "They're organized. This wasn't random. They're hitting neutral spots, planting evidence. Last week, a Silverfang warehouse burned down with Eclipse scents all over it. Yesterday, an Eclipse safe house got tagged with Silverfang marks. They're manufacturing reasons for war." We righted the couch and sat, adrenaline still buzzing. The cabin was trashed, broken windows letting in cold morning air. Furniture scattered like a tornado had hit. Jimmy pulled me against his uninjured side, and for once I didn't fight the comfort. "This is bigger than us," I said quietly, tracing the edge of his healing wound. "The radicals want the territory wars restarted. Control the hidden roots, the underground deals between packs and humans. Our relationship is just convenient fuel." Jimmy nodded, jaw tight. "My contacts have been whispering the same. Sabotage on both sides. Attacks on neutral shifters who trade with everyone. They're trying to force the packs to choose sides and restart the old blood feuds." I let out a shaky laugh. "Great. We went from coffee spill to accidental war catalysts. My mother would be so proud," he chuckled despite the pain, the sound rumbling under my ear. "At least you're consistent, spilling trouble everywhere you go." We cleaned up what we could, boarded the broken windows with spare wood from the shed, and patched Jimmy's wound properly. The humor kept us sane, him complaining about my nurse skills while I threatened to stitch him with fishing line. But underneath, fear gnawed at me. The radicals were moving fast. If they kept escalating, both packs would have no choice but to mobilize. By midday, we decided we couldn't stay. The cabin was compromised. We packed quickly and drove back toward Seattle on back roads, constantly checking mirrors. The tension in the car was thick. Every passing vehicle made my wolf twitch. Halfway back, Jimmy's phone rang. He put it on speaker. His Eclipse contact's voice came through, clipped and urgent. "More sabotage. A neutral meeting point downtown was hit last night. 3 shifters injured. Evidence planted pointing to Silverfang aggression. Your names are being whispered as the trigger." I gripped the dashboard. "They're framing us." "Worse," the contact replied. "They're using you as the spark to rally hardliners on both sides. If this continues, the alphas will have to respond. The treaty will be dust by next full moon." Jimmy ended the call, knuckles white on the steering wheel. "We need to investigate ourselves, find proof of who's really behind the attacks, expose the radicals before they force the packs into open war." I nodded, stomach twisting. Together, no more hiding in corners. We reached the city under a gray sky that matched my mood. Instead of splitting up, we parked in a quiet industrial lot and planned our first real move. A stakeout at one of the sabotaged neutral spots downtown. Night fell as we settled into position on a rooftop overlooking the damaged warehouse. The air smelled of smoke and old blood. We shared cold takeout and traded quiet barbs to stay alert. If we die doing this, I muttered, leaning against his shoulder. I'm blaming your terrible choice in getaway cabins. Jimmy's arm tightened around me. Noted. Next time I'll book something with better security and worse coffee. Hours dragged. Then movement below. 2 figures slipped into the ruined building, one carrying a canister that smelled like accelerant, the other spraying fresh Eclipse scent markers. Radicals, Jimmy whispered. Planting more evidence, we moved silently, descending through a fire escape. The confrontation was quick and ugly. We took them down before they could set the second fire, but one got a lucky slash across my arm before Jimmy dropped him. As we zip-tied the unconscious radicals, my phone buzzed with a new anonymous message. Nice try. Lovebirds. The real show starts soon. Both packs will bleed because of you. Jimmy read it, eyes darkening. But before we could react, distant sirens wailed. Human police this time, drawn by the earlier fight at the cabin or fresh reports. Worse, headlights appeared at the end of the street. Multiple vehicles, pack enforcers from both sides, converging fast. They're coming for us, I said, voice tight. And this time, they won't just ask questions. Jimmy grabbed my hand, already pulling me toward the shadows. Run! But as we sprinted into the maze of alleys, I realized the net was closing tighter than ever. The sabotage wasn't just beginning. It was closing in on us personally. Chapter 12. Ultimatum. We sprinted through the narrow alleys behind the warehouse district, boots slapping against wet pavement. Headlights swept the walls behind us as pack enforcers from both sides closed in. My arm burned from the fresh slash, but adrenaline kept the pain at bay. Jimmy ran beside me, jaw set, one hand occasionally brushing mine, like he needed the reminder we were still together. Left, he barked, as another set of lights appeared ahead. We cut sharply into a service corridor between 2 buildings, ducking behind overflowing dumpsters that smelled of rotting takeout and despair. The sirens mixed with the low growls of approaching wolves. They weren't human police anymore. These were pack muscle, and they were hunting us specifically. We pressed against the brick wall, chests heaving. Jimmy's hand found mine again, squeezing hard. They're not here to talk. No kidding, I whispered back, trying to keep my voice light even as fear clawed at my throat. I always wanted to be chased through alleys by angry wolves. Really livens up the week. His short, breathless laugh was the only answer before we moved again, slipping through a gap in a chain-link fence and into an abandoned rail yard. We hid behind a rusted freight car, listening as enforcers fanned out, calling our names with growing frustration. Then the voices changed. My Silverfang beta's voice carried clearly over the yard. Mariah Kane, the elders have spoken. End whatever this is with the Eclipse Enforcer or face immediate exile. The treaty stands. No exceptions. Jimmy's body stiffened beside me. From the other side of the yard, his father's deeper tone answered. Jimmy Adams, you are the top enforcer of the Eclipse Pack. Your duty is to us, not to some Silverfang female who threatens everything we've built. Walk away now or lose your position, permanently. The ultimatum landed like a physical blow. Exile, loss of status, both packs drawing hard lines in the sand because of us. I looked at Jimmy in the dim light filtering through the rail cars. His storm-gray eyes were stormy with conflict. They're serious, he said quietly. My father doesn't bluff. Neither do my elders, I replied, throat tight. They've been waiting for an excuse to rein me in. Safe match, safe life, safe little cage. We stayed hidden until the enforcers moved on to another section of the yard, their flashlights sweeping like searchlights. Only then did we slip away, making our way to a dingy 24-hour diner on the edge of neutral territory. We took a booth in the back, ordering coffee and greasy food we barely touched. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on Jimmy's face. For a long time, we just sat there, the weight of the ultimatums pressing down. Finally, I broke the silence. This is it, isn't it? The moment where we're supposed to be smart and walk away. Jimmy stared into his black coffee like it held answers. Walking away was never going to be easy. Not after the coffee shop. Not after the forest. Not after last night in the cabin when you told me about your grandmother's journals. I reached across the table and took his hand. I accused you once of secretly wanting a traditional mate who would roll over and submit. That wasn't fair. But tell me honestly, Jimmy, part of you must want the safety of duty, the respect, the clear lines. His grip tightened. He looked up, eyes fierce. I don't want someone who rolls over. I want the woman who calls me a brick wall in a coffee shop, who fights like a drunk raccoon, who makes me laugh while we're running for our lives. I want you, Mariah. The fire, the sarcasm, the equal who bites back. The words hit hard, cracking the fear that had been building since the pier. Heat rose in my chest, equal parts relief and terror. But the packs, I started. Screw the packs right now, he said, voice rough. They're so busy protecting 50-year-old rules they can't see the radicals tearing everything apart from inside. The sabotage, the planted evidence, the attacks on neutral shifters, it's all connected, and we're the convenient scapegoats. I let out a shaky breath and tried for humor. Great, we're not just lovers. We're walking excuses for war. My mom always said I had a talent for drama. Jimmy's lips twitched. At least you're consistent. The waitress refilled our coffees, giving us a strange look but saying nothing. We talked in low voices for hours as the night wore on. About the radicals' goals. About how the original pact might have been twisted for power. About what it would mean to actually choose each other over everything. The conversation grew heated when old fears surfaced. You keep talking about choice, I said, voice rising slightly before I caught myself. But what if deep down you do want the traditional alpha life? A mate who fits neatly into Eclipse hierarchy? Someone who doesn't drag trouble behind her like a parade float? Jimmy leaned forward, eyes flashing. And what if you're still running from the idea that someone might actually want you for you? Not for pack politics or bloodlines. You push because you're scared I'll eventually demand you submit like every other Silverfang expectation you fought against. The words stung because they were true. We stared at each other across the sticky diner table, breathing hard. Then the fight drained out of both of us at the same moment. I reached for his hand again. I don't want to submit. I want to stand beside you, as equals. I don't want submission either, he said, voice softening. I want the woman who makes my wolf kneel by choice, not by force. The reconciliation was raw and immediate. We left the diner and found his car in the lot. The moment the doors closed, the kiss was fierce. All the fear, anger, and longing pouring out. Hands gripped tightly, breaths mingling. The windows fogging up as passion overtook us in the confined space. It wasn't gentle, it was desperate, affirming, bodies pressing close in the driver's seat until the car rocked slightly and we were both gasping, foreheads pressed together. Afterward, still tangled and breathing hard, Jimmy cupped my face. We're in this together, no more running from it. I nodded, throat tight. Together. We drove to a safe, neutral motel on the outskirts, paying cash and using fake names. The room was cheap and clean enough. We collapsed onto the bed fully clothed, too exhausted for more than holding each other. My phone buzzed on the nightstand around 3 a.m. I picked it up with dread. The message was from an unknown number, but the words were unmistakable. Ultimatums delivered. You have 48 hours to separate permanently, or both packs will move against you as traitors. The radicals are ready. The war starts with you. Jimmy read it over my shoulder, body tensing beside me. Before we could even process it, A heavy knock sounded at the motel door. 3 sharp raps that echoed like gunshots. "Open up," a familiar Silverfang beta voice called. "We know you're in there, both of you." Jimmy's eyes met mine, dark with resolve and something deeper. The clock had run out faster than we expected. Chapter 13, Kidnapped. The knock at the motel door sounded like a death sentence. Jimmy was already moving, rolling off the bed and positioning himself between me and the entrance. His body was coiled tight, claws partially extended at his sides. I grabbed the cheap lamp from the nightstand, yanking the cord out of the wall. Better than nothing. "Open the door, Mariah," my Silverfang beta called again, voice heavy with authority. "We know he's in there with you. The elders have spoken. This ends tonight." Jimmy's low growl vibrated through the small room. "They're not here for a polite conversation." "No shit," I whispered, heart hammering. "But if we fight in here, we bring every pack enforcer down on this motel." Another knock, harder this time. "We have orders. Come out quietly, or we come in." I met Jimmy's eyes. For a split second, everything we'd fought for flashed between us. The coffee shop collision, the rainy alley, the full moon run, the cabin confessions, the desperate reconciliation in his car just hours ago. We had chosen each other. Now the packs were forcing our hand. Jimmy gave a sharp nod. "On 3. He counted silently with his fingers. On 3, I yanked the door open while he surged forward like a battering ram. The beta and 2 enforcers stood there, surprised for half a second. That was all we needed. Jimmy took the beta down with a brutal shoulder check that sent him crashing into the hallway wall. I swung the lamp at the nearest enforcer, the base connecting with his temple with a sickening crack. The third wolf lunged at me, but I dropped low and swept his legs, sending him sprawling. "Run!" Jimmy shouted. We bolted down the motel corridor, bare feet slapping on cheap carpet. Shouts erupted behind us. More enforcers poured out from side rooms. They'd brought backup. We hit the emergency exit at the end of the hall and burst into the cool night air, the metal door slamming behind us with a bang. We didn't make it far. A black van screeched into the parking lot, cutting off our escape route. The side door slid open. 4 masked figures jumped out, radicals, their mixed scents hitting me like a slap. Before I could react, one of them fired a dart gun. The dart hit my shoulder with a sharp sting. "No," I gasped, already feeling the sedative flooding my system. My legs buckled. Jimmy roared, shifting partially as he charged the van. He dropped 2 radicals with savage punches, but a second dart caught him in the neck. He staggered, reaching for me even as his knees gave out. "Mariah!" His voice was rough, fading. Strong hands grabbed me from behind. The world tilted. I fought the darkness, clawing at the arms dragging me toward the van, but my limbs felt like lead. The last thing I saw was Jimmy being hauled into the back beside me. His gray eyes locked on mine with fierce desperation before everything went black. When I woke, my head throbbed like someone had used it as a drum. Cold concrete pressed against my cheek. I was in a dimly lit basement. Exposed pipes, bare bulbs, the faint smell of damp and oil. My wrists were zip-tied behind my back. My wolf felt sluggish from the sedative, but it was waking up fast, snarling with rage. I pushed myself up to a sitting position. Jimmy was slumped against the opposite wall, wrists bound the same way, a bruise forming on his jaw. His eyes fluttered open as I whispered his name. "Mariah," he rasped, relief flashing across his face. Then his expression hardened. "You okay?" Bruised pride and a killer headache. Standard Tuesday. I tried to inject humor, but my voice shook. "Where are we?" "Radical safe house. I'm guessing." He tested his bonds, muscles straining. They jumped us fast, too coordinated. Footsteps echoed on the stairs. 3 radicals descended. The same mixed group from the attacks. The leader, a tall Eclipse male with a scarred neck, crouched in front of me with a mocking smile. Sleeping Beauty wakes, and her Eclipse night, He glanced between us. You two made this too easy. The packs are already mobilizing. Your little romance is the perfect spark. Silverfangs are blaming Eclipse aggression. Eclipses are blaming Silverfang's seduction. War is coming, and you lit the fuse. Jimmy's voice came out as a dangerous growl. Let her go. This is between you and the old guard. She has nothing to do with your power games. The leader laughed. Oh, she has everything to do with it. Cross-pack mating is the ultimate betrayal of the treaty. When the packs find out we have you both, they'll have no choice but to attack each other to rescue their own. Perfect distraction while we take control of the territory routes. I glared up at him, refusing to show fear. You're cowards, hiding behind old grudges because you're too weak to build something new. The pact was twisted for greed from the start. You're just repeating history. The radical backhanded me hard enough to split my lip. Pain bloomed across my face. Jimmy lunged forward despite his bonds, snarling like a wild animal. Two radicals had to hold him back. Feisty, the leader sneered. That's why you're useful. We'll send pieces of you to both packs. Watch them tear each other apart. Then we step in and rebuild on our terms. He stood, motioning to his men. Keep them separated. The Eclipse dog watches while we start with the Silverfang bitch. Make it painful. Make it loud. They dragged me toward the stairs. I fought every inch, kicking and twisting, but with my hands bound and the sedative still lingering, it was useless. Jimmy roared my name, straining against his captors with everything he had, veins standing out on his neck. Mariah, don't you dare touch her. The leader paused at the bottom of the stairs and looked back at Jimmy with cruel amusement. Beg all you want, enforcer. This is what happens when you cross boundaries that should never have been crossed. They hauled me up the stairs. The last thing I heard was Jimmy's furious, broken growl echoing through the basement. Then the heavy metal door slammed shut, cutting me off from him completely. My wolf howled inside my chest, helpless and raging. This wasn't how our story was supposed to end. Chapter 14. Truth in the Chaos. The heavy metal door slammed shut behind me, cutting off Jimmy's roar like a guillotine. Rough hands dragged me down a narrow hallway, lined with flickering fluorescent lights. My wolf thrashed inside, furious and terrified. But the lingering sedative made my movements sluggish and clumsy. Get your hands off me, I snarled, twisting hard enough to slam one radical into the wall. He cursed and backhanded me again, reopening the split in my lip. Blood filled my mouth, metallic and warm. They shoved me into a small, windowless room that smelled of rust and old fear. A single bare bulb swung overhead. The leader from the basement followed, cracking his knuckles with deliberate slowness. Time to send a message, he said, voice oily. A pretty Silverfang piece delivered to both packs. Should get them nice and angry at each other. I spat blood at his feet. You're pathetic. Using two people who actually chose each other as an excuse for your power grab. The radicals aren't revolutionaries. You're just greedy bastards who want the old territory money back. He laughed and stepped closer, grabbing my chin hard. Brave words for someone tied up. Let's see how brave you are when we start carving. Before he could do more, chaos erupted from the basement below. A furious howl split the air. Deep, raw, and unmistakably Jimmy's. The sound of fighting exploded. Crashes, snarls, the thud of bodies hitting concrete. Someone screamed. Glass shattered. The leader's head snapped toward the door. What the hell? The door to the room burst open. Jimmy stormed in like a midnight storm, fully shifted into his massive black wolf, blood streaking his fur, eyes blazing with lethal fury. He had somehow broken free. Behind him, two radicals lay crumpled in the hallway. He launched at the leader without hesitation, teeth sinking into the man's shoulder with a sickening crunch. The other two radicals in the room shifted and charged, but Jimmy was a whirlwind of rage and power. He shook the leader like a rag doll before tossing him into the wall, then turned on the others with savage efficiency. I didn't wait to be rescued. I rolled across the floor, ignoring the pain in my bound wrists, and slammed my shoulder into the knees of the nearest radical. He went down hard. I followed with a vicious headbutt that made stars burst behind my eyes. Jimmy finished the last one with a brutal snap of jaws. The room fell suddenly quiet, except for heavy breathing and the drip of blood on concrete. He shifted back to human form in a ripple of muscle and fur, breathing hard, naked and covered in fresh wounds. Without a word, he crossed the room and dropped to his knees beside me, claws carefully slicing through the zip ties on my wrists. The moment my hands were free, I grabbed his face and kissed him. Hard, desperate, tasting blood and relief. "You idiot," I whispered against his mouth. "I thought they were going to—" "I know," he cut in, voice rough. His forehead pressed to mine. "Couldn't let them touch you, not while I still had breath." We helped each other up, bodies trembling with adrenaline. Jimmy found a pair of discarded pants from one of the downed radicals and yanked them on. I wiped blood from my face with the back of my hand. "We need to move," he said, already scanning the hallway. "There might be more." We crept through the building, stepping over unconscious or groaning bodies. The radicals had clearly underestimated Jimmy's rage once they separated us. In the main basement area, we found a laptop and scattered papers on a rickety table. Jimmy rifled through them while I kept watch at the door. "Evidence," he muttered, holding up a folder. "Maps of neutral territories. Lists of planned sabotages. Instructions to plant Eclipse scents at Silverfang sites and vice versa. This wasn't random. It's a coordinated campaign to restart the territory wars for control of the underground routes." I glanced at the screen. Bank records, payments from anonymous accounts, names of hardline elders on both sides, who had secretly funded the radicals. They twisted the original pact. My grandmother was right. It wasn't just about peace after the wars. Some elders used it to lock down power and profit. The radicals are exploiting that old greed to seize everything. Jimmy's jaw clenched. And we gave them the perfect spark. 2 wolves from rival packs falling for each other. A groan from the floor made us both freeze. The radical leader was still conscious, clutching his mangled shoulder, eyes glassy with pain and hatred. "You think this changes anything?" he rasped. "The packs already believe the worst. They're preparing to move against each other. Your little love story is the match that burns it all down." Jimmy hauled him up by the collar, voice deadly calm. "Then we'll tell them the truth. The pact was built on lies. The real enemy is inside both packs. The ones who profit from keeping us divided." The leader laughed wetly. "Too late. Messages have already been sent. Both alphas know you're here. They're coming, and when they arrive, they won't ask questions. They'll see cross-pack traitors and radicals in one place and assume the worst." My stomach dropped. Footsteps echoed from above. Heavy, organized, multiple groups moving in. Jimmy dropped the leader and grabbed my hand. "We have to get out, now, with the evidence." We ran for the back exit, papers and a USB drive stuffed into my hoodie pocket. The building shook with the sound of doors being kicked in. Shouts rang out, Silverfang voices mixed with Eclipse. "They're here," I gasped as we burst out into an alley behind the safe house. We sprinted down the narrow passage, but headlights flooded the end of the alley. 2 groups of enforcers converged from opposite directions, Silverfang on one side, Eclipse on the other. Both packs had arrived, weapons drawn, wolves partially shifted, eyes full of suspicion and rage. We skidded to a halt in the middle, trapped between them. My beta stepped forward, voice cold. "Mariah, step away from the Eclipse dog. Now!" Jimmy's father moved at the same time. "Jimmy, release the Silverfang female. This ends here." The 2 groups glared at each other across the alley, old hatred simmering, ready to explode at the slightest spark. Jimmy pulled me closer instead of letting go, his grip fierce and protective. "Listen to us. We have proof. The radicals are playing both sides." A gunshot cracked through the night, not from either pack, but from a rooftop above. One of the radicals who had escaped the building fired down at us, clearly aiming to ignite the final confrontation. Chaos erupted instantly. Enforcers from both packs lunged toward each other, assuming the other side had fired first. Growls filled the alley. Shifters collided in a storm of claws and fury. Jimmy shoved me behind him, ready to fight again, but his eyes met mine with raw desperation. In the middle of the exploding battle, with both packs tearing into each other because of us, one terrifying truth hit harder than any blow. We might have found the evidence, but we were about to watch the war we tried to stop begin right in front of us. Chapter 15. The Breaking Point. Gunfire cracked overhead as both packs collided in the narrow alley like opposing storms. Silverfang enforcers slammed into Eclipse wolves with decades of pent-up hatred. Claws flashed. Growls tore through the night. A Silverfang beta tackled an Eclipse enforcer, sending them both crashing into a dumpster with a metallic bang that echoed off the walls. Jimmy shoved me harder behind him, his body a living shield. "Stay down! Like hell!" I shouted back, already scrambling for a broken pipe lying on the ground. I swung it hard at a radical who tried to slip through the chaos, catching him across the ribs. He staggered, but the larger battle swallowed him whole. The alley had become a battlefield. My own packmates fought with cold precision, while Jimmy's Eclipse wolves attacked with raw, brutal force. Old grudges fueled every punch and bite. And in the middle of it all, Jimmy and I stood back to back, fighting anyone who came too close. Radicals, enforcers. It didn't matter anymore. A Silverfang enforcer lunged at Jimmy with extended claws. I intercepted, cracking the pipe across his arm. "He's not the enemy," my beta's voice rose above the noise. "Mariah, stand down. He's Eclipse. He's using you." Jimmy's father roared from the other side. "Jimmy, leave the Silverfang, bitch, and fight with your pack." The words stung like acid. Jimmy's shoulders tensed, but he didn't turn away from me. Instead, he grabbed my hand and pulled me toward a gap in the fighting, trying to break free of the melee. We almost made it. A radical on the rooftop fired again, this time hitting an Eclipse enforcer in the leg. The wolf howled in pain and immediately blamed the nearest Silverfang, charging with renewed fury. The battle intensified. Bodies slamming together, blood spilling on the concrete. Jimmy took a hard hit to the side from one of his own packmates, who didn't recognize him in the chaos. He staggered but stayed on his feet, blood trickling down his ribs. I felt the impact like it was my own. We finally broke through the edge of the fight and sprinted down a side street, lungs burning, bodies bruised and bleeding. We didn't stop until we reached an empty loading dock behind an old factory, collapsing against a concrete pillar in the shadows. For a long moment, the only sound was our ragged breathing. Jimmy leaned his head back, eyes closed, chest heaving. "They're tearing each other apart. Because of us." "Because of the radicals," I corrected, though my voice shook. I pressed my hand to the wound on his side, trying to stop the bleeding. "We have the evidence. The laptop files, the papers. It proves the radicals are playing both sides. The pact was twisted for power and profit from the beginning. We can show them." Jimmy opened his eyes and looked at me. The storm gray was darker now, filled with exhaustion and something deeper, more painful. "And if they don't listen? If they see us together and decide we're the real traitors?" I swallowed hard. The question hung between us like a blade. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the distant sounds of fighting still echoing faintly. My wolf felt torn in half, loyal to my pack, yet fiercely protective of the man beside me who had risked everything to save me. Finally, Jimmy spoke again, voice rough. "We have a choice to make, Mariah. Right now, we can run. Leave Seattle. Disappear together. Start over somewhere the packs can't reach us. No more ultimatums. No more fighting old ghosts." The offer was tempting. God, it was tempting. Just him and me, no boundaries, no ancient rules choking us. But the thought of abandoning everything, my life, my work, the chance to actually fix what was broken, made my stomach twist. Or, I asked quietly, already knowing the answer. Or we stay, he said. We fight the radicals. We expose the truth about the pact. We stand in front of both packs and demand they listen. Together, as equals. Not as Silverfang and Eclipse, but as us. I stared at him, heart aching. This was the breaking point. The moment where love stopped being stolen moments and became something that could either save us or destroy everything. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Running would be easier, safer. We could be happy, just the two of us. Jimmy reached out and brushed a strand of bloody hair from my face, his touch surprisingly gentle despite his battered knuckles. I don't want easy if it means leaving my pack to burn because of lies. And I know you don't either. You've spent your whole life fighting their cages. You wouldn't be you if you ran now. A shaky laugh escaped me. Damn you for knowing me too well. He pulled me closer, wrapping his arms around me. We clung to each other in the shadows of the loading dock. Bodies pressed tight, hearts beating in frantic sync. The kiss that followed was slow and deep, full of fear and fierce love. The kind of kiss that said everything we couldn't put into words. I tasted blood and salt, and the quiet promise that whatever came next, we would face it side by side. When we broke apart, I rested my forehead against his. I choose to stay. I choose to fight. With you. Jimmy's arms tightened. Then we do this together. No running, no hiding. We make them see the truth. We sat there a while longer, gathering strength, making rough plans. We would contact moderate voices in both packs. We would use the evidence. We would stand as one and demand change. But as we finally stood to leave the loading dock, headlights swept across the entrance again. Multiple vehicles this time. Both packs had regrouped faster than we expected. Enforcers poured out, weapons drawn, wolves partially shifted and ready for blood. My beta led the Silverfang group. Jimmy's father commanded the Eclipse side. They had tracked us. And this time, there was no alley to escape through, no rooftop to climb. We were out in the open, exposed, with the full weight of both packs bearing down on us. Jimmy stepped forward, hands raised, the USB drive and folded papers clutched tightly in one fist. "Stop! We have proof. The radicals are behind everything," his father's voice rang out cold and final. "Enough, Jimmy. Step away from the Silverfang female, or we will take her by force." My beta echoed the threat. "Mariah, one last chance. Leave him now." The two groups began advancing slowly, closing the distance from both sides. Eyes locked on us with deadly intent. Jimmy looked at me, jaw set, eyes burning with determination. In that moment, standing between two packs ready to tear each other apart, I realized the truth. We had chosen to fight, but the fight might destroy us before we ever got the chance to win. Chapter 16. United Front. The two packs closed in from opposite sides of the loading dock, like wolves circling prey. Flashlights cut through the darkness, glinting off claws and drawn weapons. My beta's face was hard with betrayal. Jimmy's father looked at his son with cold disappointment that cut deeper than any claw. Jimmy stepped forward, one hand still gripping mine, the other raised with the USB drive and folded papers. "Stop! We have proof. The radicals are playing both sides. They're the ones behind the sabotage, the planted evidence, the attacks. The pact was twisted for power from the beginning." His father's voice boomed. "Enough lies. You've disgraced your pack by choosing her. Stand down, Jimmy, or we take her by force." My beta echoed the threat. "Mariah, this is your last warning. Step away from the Eclipse traitor." Tension crackled like electricity before a storm. Enforcers from both sides shifted their weight, ready to charge. One wrong move and the loading dock would become another battlefield. I lifted my chin, refusing to shrink. "You're all being played. The radicals want you to fight each other so they can swoop in and take the territory routes. We have evidence, bank records, maps, names of elders who funded them. Look at it before you tear each other apart. Jimmy's grip on my hand tightened, steady and warm. He didn't let go, not even when his own pack aimed weapons at us. For a heartbeat, doubt flickered across a few faces. Moderates on both sides who had lost friends in past skirmishes and were tired of endless suspicion. Then a moderate Eclipse enforcer I vaguely recognized stepped forward. Wait, let them speak. If there's proof, we need to see it. A Silverfang female, one of the quieter voices in my pack, nodded slowly. Too many strange attacks lately. Too convenient. What if they're right? The hardliners snarled in protest. But the seeds of doubt had been planted. Jimmy seized the moment. We don't want war. We want the truth. The original pact was supposed to protect us after the territory wars. Instead, greedy elders on both sides used it to control power and profit. The radicals are exploiting those old lies to restart the bloodshed for their own gain. He handed the USB drive and papers to the nearest moderate from each pack. Phones came out, files were opened. Whispers spread as screenshots and records circulated. I stepped beside Jimmy, voice strong despite the bruises and exhaustion. We're not traitors. We're proof that the old rules are broken. We chose each other, not because of instinct or fate, but because we fit, because we challenge each other, because we're stronger together than the cages our packs tried to put us in. Jimmy glanced at me, a faint, tired smirk breaking through the tension. She's still calling me a brick wall in her head. I can tell. A few reluctant chuckles rippled through the moderates. The humor cut the edge, just enough to keep things from exploding. My beta hesitated, scrolling through the documents. These payments, they trace back to elders on our side too. Jimmy's father's expression darkened as he read. This doesn't excuse breaking the treaty. No, Jimmy said firmly. But it means the treaty was never the pure peace we thought it was. It was a tool. And the radicals are using us as the hammer to smash it. More moderates stepped forward. A Silverfang male who had lost a brother in old skirmishes crossed his arms. I'm tired of burying friends because old men are scared of change. If the radicals are the real threat, we should be hunting them, not each other. An Eclipse female nodded. Same. My cousin was attacked last week. The scent markers were planted. I thought it was Silverfang. Now, slowly, cautiously, the two groups stopped advancing. Weapons lowered, not completely, but enough. The moderates from both packs formed a loose circle around us, creating a fragile buffer. Jimmy and I stood in the center, still holding hands, presenting the evidence piece by piece. We answered questions. We explained the cabin attack, the basement, the radical leader's confession. Every word was a risk, but every answer chipped away at the wall of hatred. At one point, my beta pulled me aside for a private word. You really believe this? That he's worth risking everything? I looked straight at him. He's not just worth it. He makes me better, stronger. And I do the same for him. That's not betrayal. That's what the packs should want. Wolves who choose loyalty through strength, not fear. Jimmy faced his father with the same unflinching honesty. I'm still your enforcer, but I won't enforce lies anymore. I won't choose duty over truth. Or over her. The conversation stretched for nearly an hour. Arguments flared and died. Old wounds were poked. But the moderates held the line, refusing to let the hardliners restart the fight. By the end, a shaky alliance had formed. Not full trust, but a temporary ceasefire. Both sides agreed to verify the evidence and hunt the remaining radicals together instead of turning on each other. Jimmy's father gave a curt nod. We'll meet at the old summit hall at dawn. Bring everything. If this checks out, we talk about rewriting the rules. If it doesn't, his eyes flicked to me with clear warning. My beta added his own condition. And you two stay separated until then. No more sneaking around. Jimmy and I exchanged a look. We both knew that was never going to happen. As the packs began to disperse, tension still thick in the air, Jimmy pulled me into the shadows behind a stack of crates for one stolen moment. "We did it," he whispered, forehead against mine. "A united front. Small, but real." I smiled despite the exhaustion. "We're still breathing. That counts as a win in my book." He kissed me softly. "Quick but full of promise. 48 hours ago, I was ready to run with you. Now we're trying to change 2 entire packs. You're trouble, short stack." "Your favorite kind," I shot back, nipping his lower lip. But as we stepped out of the shadows to rejoin the uneasy gathering, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out discreetly. The message was from an unknown number, short and chilling. "Nice speech. But the radicals aren't finished. The real attack comes at the summit. Watch your backs, or bury each other." Jimmy read it over my shoulder, body going rigid. Dawn was only hours away, and the fragile, united front we had just built was about to be tested in the most dangerous place possible. The same hall where the original pact had been signed 50 years ago. Chapter 17. Confrontation. The text message burned in my mind as we slipped away from the loading dock under the uneasy truce. The real attack comes at the summit. Dawn was only hours away, and the old summit hall, the same place where the original pact had been signed 50 years ago, now felt like a trap waiting to spring. Jimmy drove while I kept watch in the passenger seat, burner phone in hand, refreshing messages every few minutes. The fragile alliance between the moderates felt paper-thin. One well-placed radical strike, and the whole thing would collapse back into open war. "We should warn them," I said, breaking the tense silence. "And sound paranoid?" Jimmy replied, knuckles white on the steering wheel. "They barely listen to the evidence. If we cry wolf now, the hardliners will use it against us." He was right. We had to walk into the lion's den with our heads high and the proof ready. The summit hall looked different at first light, colder, more imposing. The converted warehouse had been cleared of its usual tables. Instead, a wide-open space had been arranged with 2 long benches facing each other, Silverfang on one side, Eclipse on the other. Moderates from both packs sat in a neutral middle section, creating a fragile bridge. Jimmy and I entered together, ignoring the sharp glares. We carried every scrap of evidence we had salvaged. The USB drive, printed documents, even photos from the radical safe house. My ribs still ached. Jimmy's side was bandaged under his shirt. We looked like we'd been through hell, because we had. The moment we stepped into the center, the murmurs started. My beta stood. "You were told to stay separated." Jimmy's father rose on the opposite side. "This summit is to verify the claims, not to parade your disobedience." Jimmy's voice rang out clear and steady. "We're not here to parade anything. We're here to stop a war the radicals are trying to start in this very room." I stepped forward beside him, holding up the printed bank records. These show payments from elders on both sides, funneled to the radical faction. The sabotage, the planted scents, the attacks on neutral shifters, all coordinated to make each pack blame the other. They want the territory routes back under their control. Our relationship was just the excuse. A heated debate exploded. Hardliners shouted accusations. Moderates demanded to see the files. Phones were passed around again. Voices overlapped until the room felt ready to burst. Then the radicals made their move. The doors at both ends of the hall slammed open simultaneously. Masked figures poured in. At least 20, armed and partially shifted. The same scarred leader from the basement stepped forward, flanked by armed radicals from both packs. "Enough talk," he snarled. "The old pack dies today, and you 2 traitors die with it." Gunshots rang out. Chaos erupted for the second time in 24 hours. Silverfang and Eclipse enforcers turned on the intruders, but some hardliners hesitated, still unsure who the real enemy was. A radical fired at Jimmy. I shoved him sideways, taking a grazing shot to the arm. Pain flared hot and sharp. Jimmy roared and shifted partially, charging the nearest radical with claws extended. I stayed human, using speed and the chaos to my advantage. Grabbing a fallen chair leg as an improvised weapon, we fought side by side in the center of the hall, not as rival pack members, but as partners. When an Eclipse radical lunged at me, Jimmy intercepted with a savage elbow strike. When a Silverfang hardliner tried to attack Jimmy from behind, I cracked the chair leg across his knees, dropping him. "Together," I shouted over the noise. "Always," he growled back, flashing that familiar smirk, even with blood on his lip. The moderates joined the fray, finally united against the common threat. The battle turned. Radicals fell one by one as the combined strength of both packs, when actually working together, proved overwhelming. But the scarred leader wasn't finished. He broke through the line and charged straight at us, a knife gleaming in his hand. "If we can't have the war, we'll take the spark." Jimmy moved to intercept, but the leader was faster than expected. He feinted left and slashed at me instead. I twisted away, but the blade caught my shoulder, cutting deep. Pain exploded down my arm. Jimmy's roar shook the rafters. He tackled the leader to the ground in a blur of fury, fists raining down until the man stopped moving. The fighting slowed. Radicals who were still conscious were restrained. The hall fell into a heavy, panting silence, broken only by groans and the drip of blood on concrete. I pressed my hand to my bleeding shoulder, swaying on my feet. Jimmy was at my side instantly, supporting me, his own wounds reopening. The alphas and betas stepped into the center, faces grim as they surveyed the damage. Jimmy's father spoke first, voice heavy. "The evidence holds. The radicals have been exposed." My beta nodded reluctantly. It seems we were being manipulated. But before anyone could declare victory, the scarred leader, still conscious on the floor, laughed wetly through broken teeth. "You think this ends it?" he rasped. "We planted one last bomb. Under the summit hall. Timer set for 10 minutes. If you want to live, you'll have to choose who gets to evacuate first, Silverfang or Eclipse. Old habits die hard." The room froze. Jimmy and I exchanged a horrified look. The leader's laughter turned into a cough. "Tick-tock, lovebirds. The pact you hate so much might be the only thing that decides who walks out alive." Moderates scrambled for exits while hardliners hesitated. Old distrust flaring again. Someone shouted for calm, but panic was already spreading. Jimmy grabbed my good hand. Eyes locked on mine with fierce determination. "We finish this," he said, "together, no matter what." But as alarms began to blare and wolves started shoving toward the doors, the real test of our fragile united front had only just begun. And the bomb was still counting down. Chapter 18. Moonlit Choice. The scarred radical's words hung in the air like smoke. "Tick-tock, lovebirds. 10 minutes. Panic rippled through the summit hall. Wolves shoved toward the exits, old distrust flaring as Silverfangs and Eclipses instinctively moved toward their own groups. Someone shouted for order. Another yelled that it was a bluff. Jimmy and I didn't hesitate. "Find the bomb," he roared, already sprinting toward the back of the hall where the leader had been standing. I ran with him, shoulder burning from the knife wound. But adrenaline drowned out the pain. Moderates from both packs joined us, the same ones who had listened earlier. We tore apart staging platforms, flipped tables, and ripped up floor panels. Seconds ticked by in heart-pounding silence, broken only by frantic breathing and the scrape of metal. "Over here!" an Eclipse moderate shouted. A small black device was taped beneath the central podium, the exact spot where the original pact had been signed 50 years ago. Red numbers glowed: 647, 646, 645. Jimmy dropped to his knees beside it. "Wires, basic timer, no remote trigger. We can cut it." I crouched next to him, blood dripping from my shoulder onto the floor. "You sure? One wrong cut and we all go up." He looked at me, storm gray eyes steady despite the chaos. "Trust me." "With my life," I answered, without hesitation. We worked together, his steady hands on the wires, my voice counting down the seconds. Moderates formed a protective circle around us, while hardliners watched from the edges. still suspicious but no longer interfering. At 2:19, Jimmy made the cut. The timer froze. Silence fell, thick and heavy. The scarred leader, still restrained on the floor, let out a weak, bitter laugh before passing out. We had done it. The hall slowly emptied of panic. Both alphas stepped forward, faces etched with exhaustion and reluctant respect. Jimmy's father looked at his son for a long moment, then at me. "You two stood in the middle of fire and chose truth over loyalty to old rules," he said gruffly. "That takes strength." My beta nodded beside him. "The evidence checks out. The radicals are finished. The ones we captured are already talking." A raw, no-frills meeting followed. No grand ceremony, just tired wolves sitting on overturned benches, passing around evidence and hashing out the future. The old pact was declared null and void. New agreements were made, open trade between packs, shared protection of neutral territories, and an end to arranged matches based solely on bloodlines. Jimmy and I sat side by side through it all, hands occasionally brushing under the table. Every time someone tried to separate us, we refused. We had earned this. By mid-morning, the summit hall felt lighter. The radicals who survived were taken into custody by a joint team. The wounded were tended. And for the first time in 50 years, Silverfang and Eclipse wolves left the building without glaring at each other. 6 months later, the city lights of Seattle glittered below our loft balcony. I leaned against the railing, a glass of wine in my hand, the cool evening breeze tugging at my hair. The scar on my shoulder had faded to a thin silver line. A reminder, not a wound. Behind me, Jimmy stepped out carrying 2 plates of takeout Thai food. He had traded his enforcer leathers for a simple black t-shirt and jeans, but he still moved with that quiet, dangerous grace. "Dinner is served short stack," he announced, setting the plates on the small table. "Extra spice on yours, because apparently you like pain." I laughed and turned to face him. Says the man who still checks the perimeter every night like we're still being hunted. He pulled me into his arms, resting his chin on top of my head. "Old habits. Besides, I like knowing you're safe." Our security firm, now jointly run with wolves from both packs, was thriving. I had opened my own graphic design studio, taking clients from both sides and humans alike. The packs were still adjusting, but the peace was holding. Moderates had taken leadership roles. Hardliners were slowly coming around or stepping aside. Jimmy tilted my chin up, gray eyes soft in the city glow. "You know what today is?" I pretended to think. "Tuesday," he smirked. 6 months since we blew up the old pact. 6 months since you chose to stay and fight instead of running with me. I rose on my toes and kissed him slowly, savoring the familiar taste of him. Best decision I ever made, even if you still snore like a dying chainsaw. "I do not snore," he protested, nipping my lower lip. "You, on the other hand, steal all the blankets and mutter insults in your sleep." We ate dinner on the balcony, trading easy banter and deeper talk the way we always did. Later, when the moon rose high and full, we slipped out to the hidden urban forest where it had all begun, the same patch of woods where our wolves had run together for the first time. We shifted under the silver light. My sleek silver-gray wolf raced ahead, agile and fast. Jimmy's massive midnight black wolf chased, powerful and sure. We played like pups, tackling, nipping, rolling through the underbrush, before curling up together beneath a break in the trees. When we shifted back, we lay tangled on a blanket, naked and breathless, moonlight painting our skin. Jimmy reached into his discarded jeans and pulled out a small black box. My heart stuttered. He opened it to reveal a simple silver ring with a small moonstone that caught the light like liquid silver. "Mariah Kane," he said, voice low and rough with emotion. "I'm not asking you to be my mate because some treaty says we can't. I'm asking because I can't imagine doing this ridiculous life without your sarcasm ruining all my best moments. Marry me, not as Alpha and Luna, just as us." Tears pricked my eyes. I laughed through them, the sound bright and free. Took you long enough, wolf boy. I held out my hand. Yes. He slid the ring onto my finger, then pulled me down into a deep, hungry kiss that promised forever. Not perfect, not easy, but ours. Later, as we walked back toward the city hand in hand, the moon watched over us like an old friend. We had crossed every forbidden line. We had chosen each other in defiance of decades of tradition. And in that choice, we had built something stronger than any ancient rule. The moon didn't bind us. We chose each other, laughing, fighting, loving, and that was enough.
Thank you for staying to the end. You are wonderful. Want more stories like this? Then don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Till next time, stay fierce. Z.